Space, the final frontier where humanity's imagination runs wild, and yet legal chaos may lurk. Imagine a satellite hurtling through space at 17,000 miles per hour and colliding with another. Suddenly, that peaceful orbit around Earth turns into a junkyard of debris. Now, before you strap on your space helmet and launch into orbit, let's talk about something just as thrilling: space law and governance. Yes, it's time to trade in our cowboy hats for some legal briefings, because in this year, space is no longer the lawless Wild West. The expanding universe of space actors, from Cold War-era space races to modern-day commercial space ventures, the number of space actors has skyrocketed. Back in the day, space was the playground of superpowers like the US and the Soviet Union. But now we have over 70 nations with space programs, and commercial players like SpaceX are crowding the orbit. Private companies have also entered the scene in a big way, bringing innovation and commercialization to new heights. As satellites and spacecraft from different countries and companies begin to fill up the same orbits, the potential for conflict and accidents increases dramatically. This proliferation demands more than just a handshake and a smile between countries. It requires concrete legal frameworks that balance national interests, private enterprise, and the greater good of humanity. Space is vast, but the valuable orbits close to Earth are becoming crowded, making cooperation and governance essential. The role of the United Nations in space governance. The United Nations plays a pivotal role in space governance, primarily through the Office for Outer Space Affairs. Since 1958, the UN has been crafting international treaties that form the backbone of space law. These treaties were initially focused on preventing the militarization of space, but today they also cover issues like space debris, resource extraction, and the peaceful use of space. However, as space activities diversify and new challenges emerge, the existing treaties and frameworks are often criticized for being outdated. For example, they lack detailed regulations for commercial activities like asteroid mining or satellite internet services. Despite these challenges, the UN continues to serve as a global forum where countries can come together to negotiate and implement space policies that will keep our skies safe for future generations. Old treaties, new problems. The current space treaties drafted in the 1960s and 70s were created in a different era. They focus heavily on preventing an arms race in space, but they don't adequately address today's challenges, such as the commercialization of space or the ever-growing issue of space debris. These outdated agreements are vague and lack enforcement mechanisms, making it hard to manage the increasingly crowded low Earth orbit. For instance, the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 prohibits placing weapons of mass destruction in space, but says little about private companies mining asteroids or cleaning up debris. As the space economy grows, these gaps in the legal framework could lead to disputes and environmental damage that would be difficult to reverse. Experts argue that without significant updates to these treaties, we risk repeating the mistakes of the past, such as the unregulated pollution of Earth's atmosphere and oceans, this time on a cosmic scale. Space debris, a growing threat. Speaking of space debris, it's a bit like interstellar litter, except that a piece the size of a paint fleck can punch a hole in a spacecraft. There are currently hundreds of thousands of objects whizzing around Earth's orbit, ranging from discarded satellites to fragments of old space missions. In this year, the push for better space debris management is louder than ever. The international community must act to prevent a catastrophic event that could render parts of space unusable for generations. These orbital graveyards of old satellites and space debris pose a growing risk to both manned and unmanned missions, and a collision could trigger a chain reaction, known as the Kessler syndrome, that might make space exploration nearly impossible. Scientists and policy experts are urging for stricter regulations and innovative solutions, such as active debris removal and better tracking systems, to ensure that space remains navigable. Commercialization, a legal puzzle. As private companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and others continue to push the boundaries of space exploration, the commercialization of space has become a central issue. Who owns the moon? Can a company lay claim to an asteroid and mine its resources? These are no longer just science fiction scenarios, they are real legal questions that need answers. Current laws don't fully address the commercialization of space, and as the space economy grows, so does the urgency to develop regulations that balance private interests with the common good. The influx of private companies in space introduces new challenges, like intellectual property disputes and the potential monopolization of resources. Space is no longer just a scientific frontier, it's a commercial goldmine. And without proper regulation, the race for space riches could lead to conflicts, environmental degradation, and economic inequality. Governments and international organizations are grappling with how to regulate these activities while encouraging innovation and investment. The need for global cooperation. No one nation can claim ownership of space, but without cooperation, conflicts are inevitable. The United Nations, along with other international organizations, has been advocating for stronger collaboration between nations. In this year's United Nations Conference on Space Law and Policy, scheduled for November, aims to address these issues head-on. This conference will bring together stakeholders from across the globe to discuss how to update space laws and ensure that space remains a peaceful and accessible domain for all. With new players like China and India joining the space race, as well as the increasing involvement of private companies, global cooperation is more important than ever. The space environment is unique in that actions taken by one nation can have global consequences, such as increasing the risk of debris collisions or affecting satellite communications. Therefore, space governance requires not just national laws, but a concerted global effort. The militarization of space. A ticking time bomb? Space isn't just for astronauts, and satellites' military interests are increasingly taking center stage. The potential for space to become a battlefield is a terrifying thought, and with no comprehensive laws to prevent the deployment of weapons in space, the threat of conflict is very real. The UN and other organizations are working to prevent an arms race in space, but without enforceable rules, the risk remains. Nations like the US, Russia, and China have already demonstrated anti-satellite missile capabilities, and the possibility of space-based weapons looms large. The development of space weapons could trigger a new arms race that extends beyond Earth, with devastating consequences for global security. Experts warn that without clear international regulations, the militarization of space could escalate tensions and lead to unintended conflicts. The international community must act quickly to establish rules that prevent the weaponization of space before it's too late. And that's a wrap on the wild world of space law and governance. If you found this deep dive into the cosmos as fascinating as we did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exciting content on space exploration. Until next time, keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground.